Now is a man named Ernie Velasquez. Ernie lives just across from this devastation here. I've been inside his house, and it's really been shaken up. It's hard to even walk up the stairs. Ernie, tell me what you're doing tonight. Where are you going to sleep? How are you going to cope?
Well, we've had a meeting with the residents of the park, and the people in charge have instructed us to, if you have a gun, to wear it around your area. And I have my next door neighbors, and they're sleeping in their car tonight, and I'm sleeping in my car, and the gun is more or less to avoid any looting that may go on.
Now, what's happened, I understand, is that the community group actually formed their own,
Yes.
I don't know what to call it, posse, but security force, because now, have there been problems in the area? What you were telling me?
Well, we understand there was some looting this morning, so they've come up with this extra precautionary effort.
Okay. Now, Ernie, show us your gun there. What do you know how to use this thing?
Yeah, I've used it many times.
What kind of training do you have for this sort of thing?
Well, this is a 380 semi-automatic, and I've had this for several years. And I usually go out into the desert or to a gun club, and I just to keep up on it. But I never thought I'd have to use it like this, you know, against looting. But if you have it, use it. That's the only thing I'm going to use, is to protect the ladies that are with me and for everything that goes with it.
Now, do you really expect that somebody could actually come in here and do that kind of looting? This is a little bit separated from the rest of the city here. It's really not. I didn't see a lot of buildings around it.
Well, I don't feel that anything's going to happen, but it's just a precautionary measure. That's about all it amounts to. And I'm still a little shook up about the whole incident, but.
Speaking of shook up, when we walked into your house, when you invited me over to look around, we had another major aftershock there. We really felt that one, and we felt several others out here. How are your nerves really tonight? I mean, I know you're tough. You got your gun with you and all that, but how are you really feeling deep inside?
Well, a little shook up. You know, really a little apprehensive, a little jittery, but I'm able to walk away from it. But like these people here had lost their homes, everything went up in flames. And there were elderly people. They had beautiful things that were in there. They can't be replaced. So I think I'm pretty fortunate at this moment.
Well, thank you very much for spending some time with us, and I'm glad that you feel fortunate. I think you are. So it is an interesting second night, the night after the quake. The concern, of course, is how do we cope? And as you've seen, for some residents here of the Green Brier mobile home estates, they're actually arming themselves. Reporting live from Saugus, Luis Patiño, now back to you.
Thank you,
Okay,
Luis.
Luis. About 5:30 this evening, Chief of Police of Los Angeles, Willie Williams, held a press conference. We're going to listen in on to what he had to say. We were doing something else and covering fires at the time he was on, so we didn't take it.
We have been advised that regarding water in the city of Los Angeles, that we can expect to have less than our full service of water for the next several days. It could be as short as 2 or 3 days. It could run as much as a week. The area hardest hit right now will be the area north of Devonshire and west of DeSoto. To compensate for this loss of water for the next few days, water is being distributed at the following locations: Sylmar High School, Kennedy High School, and the Granada Hills High School, and 1 or 2 others, which we will have other city managers mention in the next few minutes. Dealing with the issue of electricity, we can expect that electricity will be out for anywhere from the next 24 to 48 to 72 hours in many parts of our cities. Currently, we are only utilizing about 40% of the amount of electricity that a city would utilize on a day such as this. Again, the area where the loss is going to be the greatest, and we cannot right now tell you when power will be returned, consists primarily of the areas north of Devonshire and west of the 405. There are isolated spots throughout the city, not just in that North Valley area, that do not have water or power or both. But those 2 locations are the primary areas where we have both loss of water and power.
All right, that was Chief Willie Williams. That was recorded earlier. We are going to go back out to the Caltech Seismology Center now, where Carrie Berglund has been standing by. Carrie, what do you have for us now?
Well, Pat and Jerry, we may have made some progress here this afternoon. I'm here with Jim Dolan, a geologist here at Caltech, and one of the people that was out in the helicopter this afternoon looking for some shifts in the land, some surface structures, as they call them, to try to better pinpoint exactly what we're talking about. You didn't have any luck in that respect, but you're having more luck tonight, right?
Actually, it turns out we may have had more luck than we thought. We pinpointed two areas where there was some odd cracking in the roadbed, and we told the ground teams about this, and sure enough, in one of the two localities they appear to have found some very, very minor surface rupture. We're talking 2 inches.
Something you couldn't see from the helicopter, but a ground crew could see.
We just couldn't resolve it. It turns out it's 2 inches spread out over about 50 yards, so it's very diffuse, and you just have to, you're eyeballing down a gutter and you can see it's bent a little bit.
Okay, what did that tell you?
Well, that actually turns out to be interesting. That slight offset appears to have been on the Mission Hills Fault, which is one of the faults within the northern part of the San Fernando Valley. It's not the fault on which we think the earthquake occurred. We think there was probably a little bit of sympathetic rupture. I should emphasize that this ground surface rupture that they were able to find is only about 1/4 mile long. It's just a little piece of another fault that broke in sympathy with the bigger earthquake on another fault.
Okay, and what does that mean as far as this? So we still haven't narrowed it down to what fault it is, or
We
what
think
are we
we
dealing
have a
with
better
this?
we have a better idea. As you've been aware, there's been some ambiguity about which fault the earthquake actually occurred
Right.
on. We think we have a better idea of the three-dimensional distribution of the aftershocks. They tend to indicate that it was, as we speculated earlier, on this steeply south-dipping fault. So in other words, you have the epicenter at 14 kilometers depth down here in Northridge, and the fault dips up towards the surface as you go north. Okay, this fault is called the Frew Fault, F-R-E-W. And we had some information from a retired oil company geologist who kindly called us up and shared some previously unknown information with us. It turns out that they had mapped this fault in detail. It's part of a much, much larger system called the Oak Ridge system,
Right.
which runs all the way out into the Ventura area. We're looking at only the very, very eastern little tip of this fault system, which locally is called the Frew. But the whole fault system, all the way out to Ventura, is called the Oak Ridge.
Okay,
so
and
we appear to have
it
broken a
has, of
small
course,
piece of
at
that.
this point, this monitor goes down on us, but it has, in fact, happened before that you have some action on just a portion of a fault, correct?
Absolutely. For example, one of the faults we've been talking about today as a possible causative fault for the earthquake is the Elysian Park thrust fault system, which extends all the way from Port Hueneme, underneath the Santa Monica Mountains, through downtown Los Angeles, and then underneath the Pointy Hills. It's a very, very large fault system made up of several individual faults. A small piece of that fault system broke in 1987 in the Whittier Narrows earthquake, which was only a 5.9. Only about 6 miles of it broke.
Right.
But the fault system is 150 miles long.
These dots, by the way, as we speak here, the dots you see are the aftershocks as they've been
Correct.
coming in all
These
afternoon.
what we have here is this is Cube. This is Caltech USGS broadcast of earthquakes, CUBE. And what it shows is all the earthquakes that are occurring in Southern California. A couple of minutes after they occur, the computers will process them, and the location and the magnitude will pop up. You can see this cluster right in here. This is the aftershock sequence of the
And most of
Northridge
them have
earthquake.
occurred, if I'm correct, from the Northridge point north.
Correct. This earthquake does seem to have ruptured from south to north, and probably from deep to shallow.
And when we look at the aftershocks, we're better able to narrow down exactly where the original earthquake
Exactly.
took
That's
place.
why we can be somewhat more confident about actually pinning, a smoking gun situation on this Frew fault.
But there is a difficulty. Kate was telling me earlier today that because of the population of the area where the original earthquake took place, you don't have a lot of machinery, for lack of a better word, in the highly populated areas, and therefore it's more difficult to track these aftershocks than it would be if it happened out in Landers or for instance, Palm Springs area.
That is a difficulty. The way we're getting around that is this aftershock sequence is going to continue for weeks, if not months. I mean, there were months of aftershocks after the 71 San Fernando earthquake, similar size. So what we're going to do is we're going to deploy a lot of, portable seismometers, and they will continually feed us new data. And in the next day or two, we should really pin things down. But we already are leaning strongly towards pinning this earthquake on the Frew fault.
The Frew fault, also
fault.
part of
Terrible name.
not an easy one.
We
to
didn't
say.
pick it.
The Frew fault, which is also part of the Oak Ridge fault.
Correct. It's a small piece. It's a local name of a small piece of this much larger Oak Ridge system, which extends all the way from the northern San Fernando Valley west all the way over and goes out to sea near Ventura.
Does this give us an idea of the future at all? Because we've pinpointed this or think we may have. Is it
Actually,
part of a bigger picture? Should we be more concerned, less concerned about future things along this area?
Well, one immediate piece of information is there's been some speculation among some people that this part of the Oak Ridge Fault is inactive because it's overridden by another fault, the Santa Susana Fault. Well, it seems to have broken in a 6.5 earthquake, so that would suggest that it's active.
Yeah, surprise.
In terms of overall seismicity patterns, this is not an unexpected earthquake. We may not have, pointed to the Frew Fault as a potential for a 6.5 earthquake, but the fact that we had a 6.5 earthquake in the northern San Fernando Valley is not a surprise.
Right. But perhaps this Oak Ridge may have been a surprise as to exactly
There are a
why.
couple of big faults west of the metropolitan Los Angeles area. Now, historically, most seismic hazard assessment in LA has focused on the San Andreas Fault,
Right.
which is east of LA over here. Downtown LA is right there. In the past couple of years, some of us, including myself and Carrie C. here at Caltech, have become much more concerned about structures in metropolitan Los Angeles, and we focused our research efforts on those. We're beginning to understand them, especially these buried faults that appear to underlie most of Los Angeles. But there are some very big faults west of the metropolitan area which are not as well studied. The Oak Ridge is one of them. Another big one is called the San Cayetano. Both of these are very large structure. Certainly, if the whole things go by them, if these whole faults go at any given time, they could produce a magnitude 7 or larger earthquake. We're sort of moving west, and we're getting there.
Okay, Jim Dolan, thank you very much
You're
for your
very
time tonight and for explaining it in terms that I can understand. I appreciate that. Carrie C., one of the other geologists, in fact, the one that went with Jim out in the helicopter this afternoon looking for shifts in the earth, said that we go into the jungle looking for that elephant, meaning the San Andreas, he said. And then we find out that there are a whole bunch of other dangerous animals in the jungle, too. There's a tiger over here, a lion over here, a small animal that'll bite you in the ankle over here, and realize that they all are things that we have to be concerned with, too, meaning all the other faults that could cause an earthquake. And the elephant is still there. So the San Andreas is still there, too. It just doesn't happen to be one that we're concerned with on this particular day. Reporting live from Caltech, I'm Kerry Bergman. Back to you in the studio. Pat, Jerry?
Kerry, thank you for that.
very much,
Coming up on the 7 o'clock hour now, we're going to take a look at a summary of what we know up to this hour. And for that, we go to Jane Velez-Mitchell. Jane?
This is a 9 News special report.
All right, there she is, Jane Velez-Mitchell in the newsroom with the latest at the top of the hour, 7 o'clock.
All right, Pat and Jerry, at 7 o'clock, here is the very latest information in the aftermath of the 6.6 Northridge quake. We are now receiving reports that the death toll has risen by 3. Late word, at least 27 people are dead, 22 killed directly as a result of the quake. 5 died as a result of heart attacks. Now, 2 of the latest direct deaths were from falling objects in Newhall. And a Chatsworth man reportedly died from head injuries. We've also been informed that the VA hospital in Sepulveda has been evacuated. The patients were sent to Loma Linda and Long Beach hospitals. In general, area hospitals are swamped with injuries. We need to talk about something very practical here, the availability of water. And specifically, the DWP says portable toilets are available at the El Camino Real High School in Woodland Hills and the Balboa Mission Shopping Center in Granada Hills. Also, Metrolink commuter trains will be operating tomorrow. That's the good news, but some stations will be closed. That's the bad news. All stations east of Upland will be shut down due to track damage. And we had a very late word just in. I'm going to turn around and just take a look at the computer here. Hughes Aircraft facilities in Canoga Park and Malibu will be closed tomorrow, and that affects approximately 2,000 employees. And one other thing we can tell you is that in the LA area, there are power outages in Mission Hills and Chatsworth, in Porter Ranch, in Encino, in Granada Hills, in Winnetka, in Canoga Park, West Hills North, Hollywood, Northridge, Sherman Oaks, and portions of Westchester, portions of Fairfax, West LA. The list is quite long. It's a very serious situation, the power outages, and they are working hard to get that power back on. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much for that, Jane.
Yeah, we've checked on the north and east San Fernando Valley earlier for damage there, and we'd like to check on the west side now. Our Wayne Garcia, just a little while ago, filed this package.
From mudslides and house slides in Pacific Palisades to a liquefied parking lot in Redondo Beach, the west side rocked and rolled, feeling the shock waves of a great quake. In Marina del Rey, a gas station attendant sold gas by candlelight, and when the sun came out, lines at the gas pumps began to grow. When quakes cut through streets, sometimes gas lines break apart. Most times, like here along Montana Street in Santa Monica, evacuations take place and the gas lines are repaired. But other times, other places, like 14th and Idaho in Santa Monica, the ruptured line meets flame and an apartment complex explodes. It happened to Wanda and Karen Cooper while they were still inside.
It was loud and the apartment was filled full of plaster dust and gas, and you couldn't breathe, and doors were everywhere, and the floor was buckled, and you don't know what you're stepping on.
There was just the 2x4s left in the floor. There was no floor in there anymore. I mean, the whole thing just was gone.
Even without explosions, the quake did quite enough on its own to Santa Monica. All along Montana, Santa Monica Boulevard, and beyond, storefronts were beaten to pieces. Rubble was everywhere. Broken glass covered the sidewalks. The pictures tell the stories, from the 3rd Street Promenade to the First Christian Church to the stores that now look like dumping grounds. The emergency room at Santa Monica Medical Center was packed by mid-morning, but the hospital itself needed a patch job. And engineers tried to figure out how much structural damage was done.
All the glasses are broken, the plates are broken, and all my good china and my crystal, everything.
Inside Santa Monica homes, the quake knocked TVs to the floor, tipped refrigerators from walls.
Real loud, yes.
The damage outside West Side homes ranged from bad to worse, and some residents were so shaken by the quake they had breakfast outside in the open. Along Pacific Coast Highway, part of a house fell down a hill at LAX. Concrete fell onto a drive. In Redondo Beach, you didn't have to look far to see the effects of the earthquake. Here at the King Harbor Marina, it turned the entire parking lot.
Like turned into jello. And we had cars that actually sunk into this area.
The hope tonight across the west side is that the worst is over, because after today, no one seems to be up to taking much more. In Santa Monica, Wayne Garcia, Channel 9 News.
Yeah, we have much more to tell you about right now. However, Lissa Eichenberger, our Target 9 producer, is on the phone line with us now from the west side. Lissa, you're going to tell us that something happened just moments ago?
It was about 15 minutes ago, Pat. We were sitting here. I had just gotten home from Channel 9 about an hour ago, and I was very happy to come home and find the power on so I could start cleaning up all of the glass and pottery that broke from the quake early this morning. And no sooner had I cleaned that up and freed my pets who had been captive in my bedroom all day, I was sitting down and watching the show, and all the power went out again. And it seems that, as Wayne said in his package, that nerves are pretty much at their wits' end. There are cars screeching out of here. I live on Catamaran Street in the peninsula. It's not far from Washington Boulevard, and it is just pitch black. I'm sitting here with my flickering flashlight, and cars are screeching around corners, and people are yelling, and somebody either played a really nasty prank and set off a firecracker, or there was a shotgun heard. And, of course, in this area, there's a big concern, as there is everywhere, about looting. Being as close to Venice as we are, and it's pretty tense right now.
So you've lost power where you are, Lissa, and basically people are leaving the area?
It appears that people are panicky. I've heard people outside my window who have just run out in the street and said, I've had it, and jumped in their cars and literally are screeching away, driving away as fast as they can, which of course brings up the issue of people driving carefully if they are leaving. It's very eerie right now, having come home to seeing the warmth of lights in windows and people going about the business of cleaning up from the wreckage from this morning, which was fairly bad, at least internally here. And now to have this panic hit, it's quite unnerving.
I can imagine, Lissa.
Certainly understand that. Michelle Gili now is in Granada Hills for a report. Michelle, what do you have for us?
Luckily, we have some good news tonight from Granada Hills at the site of the Northgate apartment complex on Midwood. This is the tremendous fire that we've been looking at for the past hour or so from Sky 9 and from Tracy Savage's camera. As you can see behind me, the fire is nearly out. Firefighters tell us that despite a small wind that is picked up here, this ladder pipe, that's the huge stream of water you see there about 100 feet up in the air, there. It has succeeded in pretty much putting this fire out. It pumps about 600 gallons of water out a minute. The residents here tell me that they've seen 5 chopper drops, and it's certainly quite a bit smaller from what we have been looking at over the past hour or so. Carol and Danny, go ahead and step on in. You folks cannot get back to your home. You live in the apartment complex just beyond this one here. You said you left around 5:30 to do what? You couldn't get back in?
We left to go out and pick up some supplies because we were getting low on water and some food. And we live in the condominiums up here in Granada Ridge, and this is the only street entrance for our complex, and we haven't been able to get back up. We've been sitting down on the curb watching the fire.
All right, you said your husband, your dad, Danny, is up there. Is he concerned?
No, I walked up there earlier and I just told him I grabbed a little portable TV set and we have it down here. So if anything goes wrong, I'll just run back up and talk to him again.
Now, you folks have been watching this all day long. Tell me a little bit about the progression of what's gone on. It collapsed this morning.
Well, first the apartment complex collapsed in the earthquake, and it just kind of caved into the garage. And then during the day, it started to smolder, and they called the fire department. They came out and took a look, and evidently, because of all of the other calls that they've had, they've just been watching it throughout the day. But tonight, it really seemed to take off. And when we left, it didn't seem to be that much of a problem. It looked about the same, but when we were back in about maybe within a half an hour, it was, everything was blocked off and we weren't able to get back to our homes.
All right, well, good luck. Hopefully you'll be able to get back in soon. Joe, let me get you in here. You made one of the original calls to 911.
Correct. We called on, my brother-in-law and I called on the cellular phone to get the fire department out here because we saw black smoke coming out of the building in a couple of different spots, and we wanted to get it down.
Now, when was this?
That was about 5 or 6 in the morning. We called because we came up here, we saw the damage, and we wanted to check and see if there was anyone in there yelling or anything like that. But everyone seemed to got out okay. It's just once we saw the black smoke, we finally got through with the cellular phone and called the fire department. They came up here and they were looking around, but I guess they couldn't do anything because all the trucks were busy or something.
So this thing's been smoldering then ever since the earthquake?
Yes, ever since the earthquake, it's been black smoke's been emitting from the building. Some people say it was a car, but they're really not sure. And we heard also pops like the gas explosions and things like that. We turned all our buildings off below and all the water below. And, that was about all we could do.
Looking at it now, how does it compare to what you've seen at its worst?
It looks really bad right now because, I can't even see the other ridge of it. It was another half of that building because only half of it fell over. So there was another half. But the funny part is there was another building exactly like it in Van Nuys, which one of your units were out there. And it did the same exact thing. It collapsed in the middle. Nothing came over to the side, but everything crumbled towards the middle of the building, and everyone got out, though.
Joe, thank you. And what we're hearing from some of the people here, and this is unconfirmed, is that Steven Spielberg owned this building at one time. One couple of people who live in the area said that he was at one time the owner here of this Northgate apartment complex. We don't believe he's the owner now, and we can't confirm, of course, whether he owned it before. But things look pretty good now. The firefighters tell us they're going to monitor this situation. They're going to stay here. And I asked them, Jerry, you had brought up the point about the wind. We had some gusts here a little bit earlier, and I asked the firefighters whether that was posing any problem, and they said, and here we go, here's the wind again, just as we talk about it. They said that no, it was not posing a problem. I'm Michelle Geely, live in Granada Hills. Back to you.
That was a burst of good news, that's for sure.
Nearby
Bill
neighborhood.
Gephardt has been standing by live in Northridge all day, Jerry. Bill, I'm wondering if you're at the same location in front of that apartment building that collapsed earlier today.
Yeah, we've been in front of this apartment building all day, and this is the scene of probably what is the greatest tragedy so far to come out of this earthquake. So far in this apartment building in Northridge behind me, it's known as the Northridge Meadow Apartments. 14 people have perished, if you can believe it. 14 people. They all lived on the first floor. And right now, firefighters and rescue workers are not even sure that is the final count. What they are doing is they are still, as they have been doing all day. You can see in this live picture inside, this time a front apartment, going through carefully each and every section of the apartment, trying to find people who are unaccounted for. They've had dogs in there all day, well, at least since about 2 o'clock this afternoon, and we understand that some dogs, police dogs, are in there now trying to find people using their ears. Maybe they'll hear someone who is alive, or maybe just try to use their noses to try to smell someone who may be alive or may have perished. Either way, so far 14 confirmed dead and many injured, and not accounted for. That doesn't mean they're not here or not in here. That just means some relatives have come by and they can't seem to find them. Here's some videotape that we recorded earlier today during daylight hours as rescue operations were underway. The same thing we've been seeing all day. Firefighters coming and going in and out of these 400+ apartments. One of the problems out here is that many of the people who live in these apartments are either handicapped or elderly, and it's simply difficult to account for everyone. Some could be heard screaming for help earlier, and sometimes then rescuers would begin digging. That is how 8 people wound up getting rescued. They were removed from the scene in stretchers and taken to local hospitals. Some are in serious or critical condition tonight. All of those people, both the survivors and those who perished or managed to survive after the 3 floors collapsed down one on top of the other, and the injuries came from the bottom floors. Exits both in the front and the rear were blocked for most of the day as residents and rescuers tried to get in to help people. This is something that has been going on all day, and it has been going on through the night. Now, all of those aftershocks are causing a particular problem here tonight, and they have been throughout the day, because rescuers will go into a building like that. Now, if you were to see an aftershock right now, those firefighters we showed you in there would come running out, and then they have to regroup, and the whole process has to start all over again. Altogether today, firefighters assisted probably 40 people getting out from places like that. What happens sometimes, the doors would be jammed shut, and neighbors or firefighters or rescuers would have to just kick that door in. People would then be able to walk out. In 8 cases, people were pinned and sometimes in pain as rescuers tried to get them out. And as we've been seeing tragically throughout the day, one body after another being taken out and loaded into one of the coroner's vans because it was one of the 14 people who had been deceased. Firefighters expect and rescue workers expect to be here throughout the night, and certainly, they say, throughout most of the day, if not all of the day tomorrow, continue doing exactly what they're doing. As far as these apartments are concerned, if it's not obvious already, firefighters say that they certainly will have to be torn down. They're just absolutely not livable at all at this point. That's the situation from out here. We're going to go talk to some of the residents in here who are tonight looking for a place to stay. I'm Bill Gephardt, reporting live from near the epicenter of this earthquake at 4:30 this morning, Northridge.
All right,
Thanks
thank you so
for
much,
that.
Bill.
And Kim Baldonado is in Northridge now for another report.
Well, Jerry, I'm here at a Hughes Market on Devonshire in Northridge, one of the few supermarkets that's open in the San Fernando Valley. Just take a look at the line of people that is here, lined up, waiting to go inside to buy some goods they desperately need. There is still a power outage in effect. Obviously, the supermarket must have a backup generator because there's no lights in the parking lot, no signal lights operating right now. Some of these people have been standing in line for up to 2 hours. Now, the reason why there's a line is because there is damage inside the supermarket. There's some ceiling damage, some roof damage. They have a repairman in there working right now trying to fix that. So they're only letting 3 people in at a time to keep the situation safe. Let's talk to some of these people now. What is your name, sir?
Ivor.
And how long have you been waiting?
About 2.5 hours.
What have you come here to buy?
Water, battery, basic necessities, canned foods, and stuff.
Just got caught unprepared. Didn't have your earthquake kit.
Encino, and I talked to the cops and they told me you got to go around Thousand Oaks. I came to Thousand Oaks and they told me come down here because it's the only one that's open. So I'm here now waiting 2 hours. 5 more minutes, I'm in.
Great. And that's the situation. A lot of people that we've talked to, they've driven around the valley for almost an hour looking for an open store. Sir, what about you? How long have you been in line?
Well, I've been in line for 2 hours now. I'm patient. I want some water. I need some food. But hey, what can we do?
You just weren't stocked up, weren't prepared?
No, I wasn't. As a matter of fact, it just caught me off surprise 4:30 in the morning, and hey, here I am.
Is this going to change the way you do things now? Are you going to get prepared for the next one?
Actually, yes. As a matter of fact, yeah, I'm going to be more prepared. You know, get some water, get some food, get some canned goods, and see how it goes.
Are you surprised there are as many people in line as there are?
Actually, no. I believe this is the only one that's open. So far, so good.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
A lot of people coming here to get bottled water, and that's of course one of the first things that gets sold out. We stopped at a smaller supermarket just off the freeway in the city of San Fernando earlier. They sold out within an hour: eggs, bread, milk, water, batteries. I do want to let the viewers know that there are some water centers that have been set up. I don't know if we've broadcast this or not. Several high schools in the San Fernando Valley: Granada High School, Sylmar High School, Northridge High School. I believe it's the American Red Cross that does have free bottled water there. So if you need bottled water, that is the place to go. They're advising to take your own containers though, because they are running out. We've heard stories, unconfirmed reports of price gouging. Some of the smaller stores taking advantage of this situation and jacking up the prices of bottled water and batteries and that sort of thing. So that's a thing to look out for, and check those local high schools if you do need if you do need some water. Also, gas stations, extremely long lines at the few gas stations that we did see open in this area. In the city of San Fernando, there was a gas station right off the freeway, lines wrapping around the block on both sides of the corner there. Some people had been waiting in line for up to an hour. Again, the same thing. They were just caught off guard. Perhaps they maybe have a half a tank. They don't know what's going to happen overnight. They don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and they want a full tank just to be prepared. One other thing I do want to mention, I just got late word from March Air Force Base a few minutes ago that 2 C-5 transport planes are arriving at March Air Force Base. One expected to arrive at 7 a few moments ago. Another one arriving at 8 o'clock. Those large transport planes are coming from Fairfield Air Force Base. That's in Travis Air Force Base, which is in Fairfield in Northern California. They're bringing relief supplies, heavy equipment, and a 56-man FEMA team to come and help assess the situation and help us get back on our feet again. So that's good news that help is on the way from Northern California. So that's the situation here. I imagine it will stay like this throughout the night as long as this is one of the few stores open. You're going to face long lines, so be prepared, have a lot of patience. So far, things seem to be working out. Everyone's remaining calm. That's the latest here from Northridge. Reporting live, I'm Kim Baldonado. Back to you in the studio.
All right, thanks so much, Kim. Our city officials, as well as federal officials from the president on down, have been quick to respond to our emergency today. Mayor Richard Riordan held a press conference earlier. We want to show you that videotape.
As we have all seen or heard on the radio, the damage to our city has been extensive. We are not yet able to determine the amount of the financial loss, and this assessment will go on for several days. We've had 2 extensive meetings of the Emergency Operations Board, chaired by Chief Willie Williams. The exchange of information and potential solutions to the problems makes me very proud to be mayor of this city. The Los Angeles Police Department has been fully deployed with additional help from the sheriffs, and we will soon have help from the National Guard. We've had particularly problems, which the chief will go into, in Ventura Boulevard and the Devonshire area of the valley, and we've had a lot of help from different venues to attack those problems. Acting on the advice of Chief Willie Williams, I've declared a local state of emergency and have issued a directive to initiate a curfew beginning at dusk tonight and concluding at dawn. I would like to read this order to you at this time. Whereas a local emergency now exists within the city of Los Angeles, and the existence of the same has been duly published. Now, therefore, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Los Angeles, pursuant to the provisions of Los Angeles Administrative Code, Chapter 3, Section 8.29, to promulgate, issue, and enforce rules, regulations, and directives, I hereby declare the following orders to be necessary for the protection of life and property in the city. No person shall be on public property, including public streets and sidewalks, or on any vacant private property during the period from sunset until sunrise of the next day. The Community Development Department of the City of Los Angeles shall immediately activate the cold, wet weather sheltering program to provide shelter for residents who have no other place to go between sunset and sunrise of the next day. This order shall not apply to emergency service workers, military personnel on active duty, persons administering emergency aid, or licensed health workers. Each individual officer and the supervisors who approve a curfew booking must use their discretion in enforcing this law and must always keep the intent of the law in mind.
Mayor Richard Riordan speaking earlier today, and speaking about shelters, and that's where our Tony Ginyard is right now. Granada Hills High School, I understand, has been converted into a shelter. Tell us what you have there.
Well, Jerry, as of 2 o'clock this afternoon, Granada Hills High School was converted into a Red Cross shelter. Over here, we have the feeding station, the food station. So far, some 500 meals have been served. 200 people have already been registered. There has been one classroom opened up, and that is being provided for the mothers with small children and the elderly. There is a lot of water here. This is, as Police Chief Willie Williams stated, Granada Hills High School is one of several areas that water is being supplied to all of the families. And there are some problems, too, because of no electricity. They're unable to open the gymnasium. It's too dark in there to keep some families in, although there are a lot of people out here. With me now is Bill Frazier. You are the station manager here right now. What's the situation here?
We have over 200 people. As you said, we are sheltering those people with small children and the elderly in a classroom with the blankets. We have cots and blankets trying to get to us, but the problem with the reduction, with all the roads down and with all the lights out, it's just a slow process.
So you have food, you have supplies coming, but they just can't get here, right?
Correct. Red Cross has gone into, this is a major Red Cross emergency. We will have equipment and personnel and everything, all the supplies we need are coming to us from all over California, but it's a matter of getting them in here. Things coming out of, for instance, the San Joaquin Valley are going to have to go the long way around because 14 and 5 are closed coming through the Newhall Pass.
Now, one thing that a lot of people, I'm sure, at home who still have some electricity or are watching on portable television sets, what if they're looking for family members and they might be here?
Red Cross will start what are called disaster inquiries within the next 48 hours. Right now, we're still in the emergency stage. We're still in the preliminary stage. We are going to do as quickly and as best we can as far as making those inquiries. But it's going to take a while before we can get everything cranked up and running with us.
Now, you have some food. Do people, if they have anything, need to bring anything with them?
If you're going into a shelter, if you have your own blankets or sleeping bags, please bring those with you because that's going to be the thing that is in short supply. We do have food here. We will be serving breakfast again here in the morning. This shelter will be open as long as there is a need. By tomorrow night, we should have plenty of cots. Hopefully, we'll have electricity by then and we can go into the gym. It's just very, very dark in there, and it's a rather frightening experience to be standing in a totally dark room listening to the ground shake and the building crackle.
Now, so often, some people think that they should donate something. Do you want any donations at this point?
Right now, if they want to make a donation, they should go ahead and make monetary donations. That's the best thing they can do.
But no blankets coming down to the shelters?
No, we really don't have the facilities. Those blankets by law would have to be cleaned and disinfected. We don't have the ability